What's up, YouTube? So, a couple days ago, I made a comment on the Jim Carrey Cold Dead Hand spoof he did, ripping on gun owners and Charlton Heston. Because it aggravates me, whatever. And what I said was that he was washed up and it was a joke, basically. Not wording it word for word, because I can't find that part of the comment at the moment. But that was 2 days ago. Or no, that was 3 days ago. And then I got a response that day from a guy named Daniel Sivan. He said, I think Jim is just joking and not serious because if he was a serious anti-gun advocate, he wouldn't be using them in his movies to shoot at people, unless he isn't joking and is just a non-essential hypocrite. And I just said, you can't be serious. He is anti-gun. Most anti-gun actors use guns in their movies and have armed bodyguards. They're idiots and hypocritical losers. And that was it. That was 2 days ago. Well, yesterday, apparently this other guy named Search263 left me one message, and I just noticed it this morning, or earlier today, so I didn't respond until today. And he said there is a serious difference between the gun nuts and them, though anti-gun actors use guns for self-defense. And he said gun nuts use guns for whatever reason they damn well please, and a majority of them support fully automatic weapons being sold at a market. Well, first of all, he must not realize, which I told him, that without a special license, you can't buy a fully automatic weapon. I don't agree with that. I think you should be able to buy a fully automatic AR-15 or whatever, but that's not the law right now unless you have a special license. So, moving on. And he says anti-gun actors at best only have handguns or rifles besides them. So I responded to this Search263 and I said, I support fully automatic weapons. I support doing away with all background checks and restoring true constitutional carry. No one should ever need a permit to own or carry a gun. And I said, any type of firearm, the Second Amendment says, I said no one should need a permit to own or carry any type of firearm. I said the Second Amendment says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It does not say the right of the people to keep handguns shall not be infringed. So what is your point? And that's what I asked him. That was 5 hours ago, and he responded quickly, and he said, actually, guns need to be regulated because of crazy-ass people who shoot up schools and things like that. And he says, I mean, you'd be thinking differently if a gang came into your town with full automatic rifles and enough ammunition to take out a small army. He says, firearms should only be given to those who pass specialized psychological screening and go through classes. About the only guns that should even be permitted on the streets by civilians are handguns. Then the best part is he goes on to tell me that, and the Second Amendment focuses on the military, not civilians. A well-armed militia. You realize, though, that the Constitution was written a couple hundred years ago. This isn't the 1800s anymore. Weapons are far more advanced and far more destructive than they were back then. If the Founding Fathers had the foresight to see the kind of weapons that would be created by now, they would surely be thinking differently. And then he goes on to say, so let me put it this way. Before you go spout your nonsense about the Constitution, take a few history classes and pay attention closely. He says, oh wait, I forgot, the United States does not fund its educational systems very well anymore. You want to know a little secret? Even if they were to cut the military budget by a significant amount, the U.S. would still have the largest military in the world. He says, education reform, healthcare, and gun control, these are three things the U.S. needs. He says, you know, though, education reform won't happen because the gun-toting extreme, the religious redneck morons in power would rather have their people ignorant. The way the people couldn't figure out, or that way the people couldn't figure out that they have the power, they can overthrow them. What the people don't realize is they have the power. They have more than they realize. They want something to happen. They have to make it happen. And I basically responded and I said, oh, here we go with that malicious shit that all you anti-gunners cling to. It's sad and weak argument. And a weak argument, the people are the militia. The founders were not speaking of the military. If they were, the Second Amendment would have said the right of the military to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I told him you need to move on to your next weak argument. He responded and he said, the Second Amendment was written because the Continental Army was weakened by the Revolution. And local militia had proven effectively in the past, particularly effective during the Revolution, which is why it was made into that amendment. There was 200 some years ago, my friend, he says, the nation was much smaller, and so was our general population. But with a population in the millions and a rather large nation, we don't really have much to worry about, especially with how technology is nowadays as compared to then. Imagine what would happen if you gave a full automatic rifle or a semi-automatic rifle, just a single one, to someone back then. That would have drastically changed the tide of the war. He says, excuse me, with this amendment, they hope to secure the safety of the people in their own homes, at least back then. Now that every amendment is used against its intended purpose, instead of helping people, it's now taking more innocent lives than you can imagine. He goes on to say, back in the 1800s, guns were needed for defense of one's own families because it was a far more dangerous time. Today in 2013, it isn't as needed, and it is a much safer time compared to that day. We have trained officials keeping our streets safe, helping keep our families and loved ones safe. Then he says, admittedly, there are still threats of danger, so guns aren't that bad as long as they're used for the right reasons. However, there are those that do use them for the wrong reasons, abusing the privilege. And in my personal opinion, gun ownership for civilians is a privilege that should honestly just be revoked if a few abuse it. Because it only takes one person to ruin it for everyone. At that point, I just said, well, you're entitled to your opinion like everyone else, but it does not change the fact that the Constitution clearly states gun ownership is a right, not a privilege. And I said also, the current so-called assault rifles that I and many others own are not fully auto. And the simple fact is that there are many rifles out there that have far more firepower than an AR-15. The AR-15 looks scary to some people, so people believe the media bullshit. And I hope you know that during the 10 years we had the assault weapons ban, government findings showed it had no effect on gun crimes or deaths. And since it has expired, there has not been a rise in gun deaths or violent crime. And I said the truth is these types of rifles are only used in 1% of crimes and shootings. So you see there is a lot of propaganda being shoved down your throat. And he has not responded yet. That was 3 hours ago. But I just love when these people try to give me that shit about the militia and the military. We didn't have a huge military then, for one, to my knowledge. And it wouldn't say the right of the people, like I said in my comments. It would say the right of the military. So it's a weak argument. I mean, he didn't insult me or nothing, so it couldn't be as bad. He has the right to his opinion. But I'm trying to give him the facts. He's very educated on certain things. I give him that. He knew a lot of information, so I can't say he's stupid. I just feel the guy's misguided, but that's what they call debating, I suppose. You know? Anyway, I thought I would share it, but I just wish people would pay more attention and not take the Constitution and Bill of Rights and twist it their own way. I mean, the First Amendment, you want to cut that down too? Haven't you ever noticed that all these people, they want to have their First Amendment right to spout off their gun control and how it's a privilege and we should be unarmed, but how would they feel if someone tried to shut down their free speech? Are they going to go along with it? Or are they going to take that too? You can't have both. That's the thing I can't get through people's heads, is that you can't have some rights and not others. You can't pick and choose your rights. It's not even practical. It makes no sense whatsoever. If it's a right, it's a right. You know, they can talk about Supreme Court and the Heller decision. Well, the Heller decision was wrong. Because while it did say that it wasn't, gun ownership was an individual right, it also said there could be restrictions on that right. Let me see the actual wording here, because I can't remember it all right now since I got you guys with me. Let me see here. The Heller decision. District of Columbia versus Heller. It was in 2008. It was a landmark case in which the Supreme Court of the United States held a 5-4 decision that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution protects an individual's right to possess a firearm for traditional lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home and within federal enclaves. The decision did not address the question of whether the Second Amendment extends beyond federal enclaves to the states, which was addressed later by McDonald versus Chicago. It was the first Supreme Court case in the United States history to decide whether the Second Amendment protects the individual right to keep and bear arms. I'm trying to find, what else did it say here? And it said on June 26 of 2008, the Supreme Court affirmed the Court of Appeals of the D.C. Circuit in Heller versus District of Columbia. The Supreme Court struck down provisions of the Firearm Control Regulation Act of 75 as unconstitutional, determining the handguns and arms for the purpose of the Second Amendment. Found that the District of Columbia Regulations Act was an unconstitutional banning and struck down the portion of the regulation that requires all firearms, including rifles and shotguns, to be kept unloaded and disassembled or bound by a trigger lock. So, I don't know, I guess I can't find the actual wording right now for whatever reason, but let me see if I can go back. What the hell? Let me see here. Heller decision. The Heller case was about the blanket ban on handguns and the requirement of trigger locks. Let's see here. Bear with me. The Supreme Court was clear in Heller that while law-abiding responsible citizens have the right to a gun in the home for self-defense, there is a wide variety of sensible gun laws that remain constitutional. And it said sensible restrictions could clearly be permitted by the Second Amendment. Oh, anyway, I don't know. I can't find the clear thing on it, but sorry about that. Wish I would have looked it up earlier. I just can't remember the exact wording of the Heller case, but it wasn't clear cut and dry, unfortunately. If we had a real Supreme Court who followed the Constitution, we wouldn't have registrations and licensing and background checks, because the Supreme Court would have done its duty and upheld the full intent of the Second Amendment and the Constitution. Anybody out there who doesn't fucking like it, you know what? I really don't give a shit. I'm going down with the civil liberties ship. I don't want to hear about how the felon might get a gun, the crazy person's going to get a gun. They're getting them anyway. So while they're getting their fucking guns, or whatever, the rest of us got to go through background checks, a license to carry a gun, all that other shit. And every time we turn around, we have to look and see, are our politicians trying to strip more of our so-called right that we have left, which we pretty much don't. Because they know you got it. Your privacy has been invaded. How come none of these fucking privacy people that are against guns talk about that? Is my privacy being invaded? Yeah. What the fuck I own is my business, right? That's the way I see it. But no, it's the federal government's business and the states, apparently, because there's a record of the weapons that I own. And I don't want to hear about how they'll never try to take them because they're doing it in New York with the fucking SAFE Act, okay? See, I'm getting myself all riled up. It's just, I get so sick and tired of this shit. Some of these people should look at the history in this country of democide, okay? And how many fucking countries, governments have killed their own people after taking their guns away. There's a long list. There's a documentary called, what's the name of it? Shit, it's by the Jews for Preservation of Firearms. Damn. Innocence Betrayed, I think it's called. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to find it. I'm going to put it on YouTube so people can watch it. Because they really need to pay attention and look at the actual history of what happens when the government takes your weapons away. Okay, they're not looking out for you or me. They want the power. They'll use any excuse. They've done it in the past. They use children. Obama's used children, just like Hitler did. Puts the children up there, smacking hands with them as he's signing his stupid-ass executive bullshit orders, and tells the rest of us to basically go fuck ourselves because we don't have any rights. Isn't that what he's doing? That's what he wants. And don't think for 1 minute, if he thought he could have got away with it, that he would have done an executive order on AR-15 rifles and high-capacity magazines. Because he'd have fucking done it. There's no doubt in my mind. And for you true patriots who know what the fuck is going on, there certainly is no doubt in yours either. Anyway, I guess I've gone on long enough. That's it for now. Please rate, subscribe, like if you want. If not, well, then don't. But if you stop by and check it out, thanks for looking at my page. Later.